Hi, everybody. Morning. This is a really bad yearbook photo of me from, well, I'm not even going to get into it. Just by show of hands, how many people here work for a consumer-facing brand? Not many. All right, by show of hands, how many people are actually paying attention to me right now? Okay. All right, so we've got a baseline. Rule 1 of communication is always know your audience. So you can quote me on that. As Steve said, I do a lot in terms of crisis communication. I never really thought of myself as a crisis communicator. I just find myself in trouble a lot. So I spend a lot of my time now talking actually not so much to brands as much as I do to consumers, to influential consumers, to bloggers, to journalists, to people who can influence others about your brand. And over the last few years, they have told me about what their expectations are, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So just as a quick highlight, this is a slightly better picture of me. It's been touched up, as you can see. It's not really about me. I'm not here to sort of sell myself or sell my business. If anybody wants to, talk to me about that, that's fine. But I would ask you to do one thing for the purposes of this demonstration is if you are on Twitter and you have your phone, follow me on Twitter because later on in the presentation, it's going to be relevant. I am not just trolling for followers, I promise. Wescott1 is my Twitter account, and hopefully this is going to work. So we'll give it a try. But today is really about what your customers expect. And what I have done over the last few years is talked with a lot of influential people online. And there's a lot of studies about this at all the big PR firms in the world. But you can really boil it down to the basic expectations of your most influential consumers. And I'm going to go through these quickly, but there's a lot of research behind this. And I start at the bottom. The very first thing that an influential person, somebody who's got a big online following and a lot of influence online, you have to be easy for them to find. They go to Google, you're the first result in Google. They go to social media, your brand on Twitter. They've got to find you and not some, copy of you. The CEO of your company's got to be there. You're very easy to find. If you're a big company with a bunch of different product lines, they want to be able to find what they're looking for very quickly. So you need, online that translates to an SEO strategy and to a very clear social media strategy. You have to be there to find them. If they can't find you, they can't talk about you. The second expectation they have is they want you to care about what they have to say. You have to ask them for input. Most people sort of put that as sort of the tagline at the bottom. They want somebody who is actively pursuing their opinion and actively fostering a conversation among different people, not just you, about your product, your industry, your issues, your fashion choices, whatever it happens to be. That was a joke and nobody caught it. And so that's really their expectations. The third basic expectation is you have to be everywhere they are. Lots of people, lots of Gen Y, millennial type people don't even use email anymore. They're all of Facebook. I work with some Gen Y folks now with my own business, and trying to reach them on email is virtually impossible. I've got to get on Facebook. I've got to get on Twitter. I've got to do the DM. I won't do Snapchat, but there's a whole bunch of other things that they want to use. And I have to be where they are if I want them to work with me. You have to be where they are if you want them to buy from you. So those three things, most brands do pretty well. SEO has been around for a while. Businesses don't get successful if they're not asking their customers' opinions. And it's not really hard to start a Twitter page or start a Facebook page. So most brands who are sort of in this century get to that point. It's the three on the top where it starts to get really hard, and fewer people will achieve these expectations. The first one is great content. What is great to you may not necessarily be great to your customers. It is not about you. It is about them. I'll say that again. It is not about you. It is about them. Your content online has to be visually engaging to them. It has to talk about the things that they care about. It has to be moving quickly. It has to understand the expectations of, if your customers are millennials, you have to understand what they look for online. They are video focused. They are mobile focused. They are, attention span of, it's slightly longer than your average member of Congress, but it's still pretty short. So you have to understand what great content means to them. And surprisingly few companies do that. Surprisingly few companies go out to their customers and say, what are you looking for? How do you operate online? And how can we make sure that we are doing what you need? Next level of expectations, actually answering questions. How many people here have been on Twitter and they see somebody complaining about an airline whose, their flight just got canceled? Or they had a really bad experience at the drive-in, or they're just complaining about, I had a bad experience with the brand. Well, most of the time they're doing that because they're trying to get that brand to answer them, right? And so if they have a question or if they have a complaint, are you paying attention to that, and are you saying, oh wow, I'm sorry you had a really bad experience, let's take this offline and address your concerns? Or, yeah, this is Delta, there was a thunderstorm, we're not going to fly into a thunderstorm because we'd rather have you late than dead. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do, but having somebody there to answer that question, that is a basic expectation of the elite in social media. And finally, and this is the hardest one for most brands to get, is the CEO or senior leadership people of the company should be online. And not just, I have a Twitter account that pushes the press release that the communications office has. I'm actually online, and I'm actually paying attention to things, and when I have information, I'm going to share it. And when somebody has a question for me and they send it to me, I'm going to pay attention to it and I'm going to address it. That is very, very hard. But that is an expectation of your consumer. This is what they expect from you, not what they'd love to see, not, pie in the sky. These are your expectations. This is baseline now. If you want to be seen as good in the field, you have to meet all 6 of these. Very few companies actually do. And what happens when they don't? I Googled image search creepy, and this was what I got. Well, so we're going to figure it out now, because basically what happens is consumers will do nasty things to you online, and you have to be ready for it. Okay? There's a storm coming. Have you boarded up your windows? But more importantly than that, and I'll get into this at the end, but we're going to try to see how many people can handle what happens next. All right? By show of hands, how many people think can handle it when somebody says something bad about you online? Okay? What do you do when somebody says something bad about you online? Do you look them up? You say, okay, is this just, is this my dad acting up again? Sorry, that I told him not to dress like that. But, you check them out, right? You say, okay, does this person have a lot of followers, or is this just one of those phantom accounts? Did they cuss? Did they accuse me of doing something illegal? What kind of influence do they have? Is this somebody I can actually engage with? If it is, great. How do I do it? If it's not, do I just let sleeping dogs lie? What do I do? This is generally not the hardest thing to deal with. It's sort of the equivalent of some idiot walking around your shop saying, oh, I bought this and it was broken. People feel comfortable that they can deal with that? Anybody feel like they can't deal with that? You can raise your hand. There's no shame, because there are a lot of people who really can't. But, all right, well, just like any other stress test that a bank would have to be subject to, let's go to the next level of difficulty. What happens when a lot of people say something bad about you? Maybe there's a hashtag, your brand name sucks. Can we handle that? How many people, by show of hands, think they can handle that? Wow, I lost you quick. Okay. Well, has anybody ever had that situation? Because it's coming if it hasn't. Anybody thought to maybe hijack that hashtag? Anybody thought to say, sorry, you think my brand sucks? Let's talk about it. Here's where you can get information. Anybody try to figure out using some social media monitoring software to go back and say, okay, who started this? And maybe I can reach out to them offline? Anyone? Okay. What happens when somebody looks up your brand name and the first thing they find is your recall? Somebody finds something bad for you online. Are you ready for that? Toyota wasn't ready for that. And then next to that, Toyota, when you type in Toyota, what happens is the Google ads from the trial lawyers to say you can sue them here, become part of this class action. Are you ready for that? It's a rough crowd. It's quiet. Anybody feel like they're ready for that? Because it's going to get worse. What happens when they find something bad about your product as they're trying to buy it? Anybody familiar with the app called Good Guide? Most dangerous thing in America today to corporate business is a mom with a smartphone. There's an app. It's called Good Guide. I have it here on my phone. You go to the supermarket. It's got one of those little barcode scanners. You scan it. And it says, this product contains high fructose corn syrup. It's made by a company that's not that great to the environment. The makers of this company violated the Clean Water Act. There is a companion product that we think is a little bit better, 4 feet down the shelf to your right. No, your other right. Seriously, because they have RFID tracking and they know where the products are, and it's for 28 cents more or less. Good Guide. They're a West Coast-based company. They've built a database of all kinds of products. It's all crowdsourced. May or may not be accurate. Are you aware of what Good Guide has to say about your product? Anyone ever heard of Good Guide before? How many people knew about Good Guide before now? Anybody ever heard of Boycott? It's like Good Guide on steroids. Now people can use Boycott because they got information from good guys and they can organize boycotts against you. Or they can organize, we like this product, so Stonyfield Organic. Everybody loves Stonyfield because Dannon is apparently evil. I don't know why, but so we can boycott them and buy them, and you can use these apps online, and they tend to be agitators, animal rights extremists, that sort of thing. But these are the apps they use, and then, innocently enough, a mom will stumble on this app. Oh, I can find out and compare prices because Good Guide will do that too. And then I scanned a box of Cheerios, and at one time it said, this company has violated the Clean Water Act. Cheerios. It was a paperwork error, but they didn't get into that level of detail. So what do you do when somebody finds something at the point of sale? So what happens? So somebody scans your product, they're ready to buy it, they're ready to give you their money, and they learn that you are not that good to the environment, or you've got some chemical in there that they can't pronounce. Thank you, Food Babe. And they put it back on the shelf. And what can you do about it at that moment? Do you know what's in that database? Can you contact the folks who run Good Guide and say, we think you gave us a raw deal? Do you know where to look? There's a storm coming. Are you ready for it? We've heard about Periscope. We've heard about Meerkat. Periscope is an app. How many people here know what Periscope is? We've talked about it a little bit here online. That's the storm coming. Periscope is a new app, and Meerkat it came out a little bit before it. Periscope is an app that allows you to broadcast to your Twitter followers whatever you are viewing on your phone. Periscope keeps me up at night as a crisis communicator. How many people here work for farms? Work on a farm? Anybody work on a farm? Okay, 1, 2. You're a farmer? Okay. So what if an animal rights extremist goes into the local ABC affiliate and says, we have an undercover person at this farm watching animal abuse in progress, and we'd like to show it to you. And they stage something at the farm, boom, and they've got a journalist that says, I just saw this happening at your farm. This wasn't an edited video or whatever. This is happening live. We're going to call the police. We're going to call, a camera crew. We're going to get down there. We're going to put you on. And they'll record that video and say, this just happened at your farm 20 minutes ago. How do you respond? There's a storm coming. Are you ready for it? I have another problem with Periscope. Periscope is really concerned about kids going to concerts and broadcasting the Jay-Z concert and violating copyright. That's what they seem to care about. I care about the school shooter who walks into the community college with a gun in one hand and a camera in the other and is broadcasting your kid getting shot. There's a storm coming. Are you ready for it? Think about that workplace violence. Think about that in the store. There's a storm coming. Are you ready for it? You want to know how Periscope works? You want to see it? Anybody here got a sense of humor? Anybody scared? Because there's a storm coming. Where is it? Anybody following me on Twitter? Anybody want to volunteer to be my first victim on Periscope? Anyone? Okay. Let's see if I can make this work. Initializing video stream. Start the broadcast. Hey, this is David Wescott. I'm an Alltech Revelation, and I have my first victim. Thank you for bringing the lights up. This is a demonstration of what Periscope can do for you and your brand. Hi.
Hi.
What's your name?
Roger Harvey.
Roger Harvey. Where do you work?
Tuffy's Pet Foods.
Tuffy's? Tuffy's Pet Foods.
Yes, sir.
That's exciting. How big is Tuffy's Pet Foods?
We're a very large company.
How many employees?
About 2,300 employees.
How many of them make minimum wage?
I couldn't tell you.
How many of them, your leadership, are they all white?
Yes.
People who work on your line, are they all not white?
No.
Okay. He's passed test number 1. How many animals has your pet food killed this week?
How many animals have we killed this week?
Yeah.
None.
That's a good record.
Yes.
You ever been sued?
No.
Never been sued?
No.
Are you
To
on?
my knowledge.
Okay. So you can see what this happens. And then I am a consumer, and I said, I just fed my dog your pet food, and he got sick. What do you have to say about that?
I'm sorry about that. We can.
Oh, you're sorry? So you did it?
do a test. We can do a test on the food and see if it's a food related.
Okay. So you're gonna hide behind the scientists now? Is that how this is gonna work?
No, we always test it just to make sure it's nothing wrong with it.
All right. You're a really good sport.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But that is what's going to happen. Let's give him a round of applause. Notice I didn't abuse it. No animals were harmed in the filming of this video. So, and I'll just double tap to flip the camera. Let's see if I can get this. Yeah, and I'm going to apologize to you right away for making you feel uncomfortable. So, thanks very much for your help. All right, that's Periscope. Now that's going to be live on Twitter. It was broadcasting as we spoke. I got 3 people to watch it as it was happening. You were watching? Yeah, and so now that video is going to be, it's forever. That's on the internet forever. I'll take it down, if you know. Now what happens? Now people will look at that video and they'll say, oh my God, did you see what happened to Tuffy's Pet Food? These people, how many of them are minimum wage? How many people are white? And they'll play all these games. Radical transparency. I did some stuff with Hannah and the Animal Agriculture Alliance, a project at a pork farm called Radical Transparency, where we brought bloggers in and we said, you can ask anything you want. And they asked all kinds of tough questions. They got all kinds of great answers. They met those expectations, and now those folks love them. They come to their aid when the animal activists attack. They literally do. They made the animal activists go away because they met the expectations. You don't meet the expectations of consumers who have these questions, and bad things will happen. So how did you all do? My little stress test. You think you're ready? You think you're ready for this storm that's coming? Here's how you get ready for this storm that's coming. Rule 1 of communication. Know your audience. Know your stakeholders. Know those bloggers that Hannah and I were talking about and that we care about. Know who they are. Identify the influential people in your universe. The customers with all of the Twitter followers. The people who have an ambitious life online and offline. Meet those 6 expectations that I talked about. And I hope you wrote them down. And if you have any questions, I'll be available afterwards. Meet those expectations. Monitor what's going on. There's a lot of different online monitoring platforms. Some of them are expensive. Some of them are very difficult to use. They are necessary. A Google alert is too late. There's Meltwater, there's Crimson Hexagon, there's Radiant 6, there's all kinds of names. I'm happy to talk them through. And then most importantly, and this was a slide actually in Nikki's deck, it said relationships equal opportunities. Relationships are what's going to get you through this storm. You need allies. You need consumers. You need people who will take the fight to the folks who want to mess with you. The only way you do that is by knowing who your stakeholders are and meeting their expectations. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, is there a storm coming?
There's a storm coming. Are you ready for it?
Are you ready for it? Where to begin? Wow. So we're all in the food industry, and I guess we don't have to be directly implicated or directly involved to be touched by some of these issues. So what advice would you give the collective food industry now?
Thank you. Honestly, the best and frankly the only thing you can do is know your stakeholders and build relationships with them. Do a very, very good job identifying those stakeholders and do everything you can to meet the expectations that they are very transparent about. That is what they want. They want access to you. They want stuff that engages them and that informs them. They trust their own peers more than they trust you. I think that's a common knowledge in agriculture communications. That's why we bring these stakeholders together and let them talk with each other, because they view each other as more credible. So building relationships with stakeholders and letting them be your allies and letting them be your messengers is really the important thing. I work with a social psychologist at my company, and one of the things that we tell our clients all the time, everybody's concerned about messaging. You want to tweak your messages. This word resonates. There's Frank Luntz has made a fortune saying that you need to use this word, not that word. And there's some value to that. But there's far more levels of engagement and credibility beyond simply what word you use. Who is the messenger? What are the conditions under which the message is being conveyed? How many other people are saying it? Is there an echo chamber? So there are a lot of things that a food brand can do to create that environment, and it really has to do with understanding those stakeholders, understanding their needs, and meeting those expectations.
Okay. And then, David, how do you define a complaint being big enough to have to deal with it, or is there how big a difference is it between big or small?
Well, that's a great question. I think you have to define that. There's no one size fits all. You have to define what is the threat to your business. So how many people in here are B2B companies? See themselves as B2B. So you probably have a smaller number of customers with more power. You've got 2 or 3 customers that represent a big percentage of your business. Those 3 people, if they have gas, you want to run and get them a Rolade. That was really not appropriate, was it? But no, I mean, so you care about them. You understand that those are your stakeholders, and you will understand if that's a problem. Some angry crank with 12 Twitter followers is trying to just get attention. You can pretty much make that case that this isn't the right person. But if that person happens to be the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, then you have an idea. But the brief answer is it varies. It depends on the sort of situation, the business you're in, and what you can find out about that individual person who's making the complaint.
And then you mentioned examples of some of the apps, the Periscope and the Wescott and so on and so forth. Sitting just here and looking at the audience, it seemed that a lot of us were unaware, perhaps, of all of these type of information systems that exist today. As those are going to be shared more and more, is that what poses the biggest risk, that people will go into the stores with multiple apps and be prepared to actually do the searching?
Well, I think that, again, it all boils down to knowing who those stakeholders are. There are people who are going to just use their barcode scanner and compare prices of different products, and that's how they're going to do it. The best way to find out is to find out who those people are and ask them. But yeah, there are a handful of digital natives who will have 50 different apps, and they'll all use them. We call them crazy people. And they will be out there. But generally speaking, when people are concerned about all the tools, what I will tell them is put people before platforms. If you understand the people and the stakeholders, they will tell you what tools they use. They will give you the sort of information you need to, to sort of stay current and say, okay, I need to be here and here and here. These are my priorities. These I can worry about later.
And the final question here, David, is one particular person here said they're involved in the processing side of food. But the point is, are they more vulnerable or more open for attack than any other part of the food chain?
Well, ironically enough, we took a dozen online moms to the kill floor of a Smithfield processing plant last year, and we got amazing results. But it was because we did it in a particular context, in a particular way. We did it as part of a larger farm-to-fork story. And so just because you have a difficult visual doesn't mean that you are somehow more vulnerable. What makes you vulnerable is the fact that you want to hide your difficult visual. And so, at least that's what, in talking to stakeholders, I've learned. It's not so much that it's messy, it's that you're trying to hide it, that you have something to hide. What's the old saying? It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. That's really what people care about. People, they have curiosity. They may want to know where their food comes from. They realize it's not always pretty, but they're willing to deal with it if they know it's wholesome and safe and good for you.
And my final question that I've been dying to ask you, and that is, when you look at some of the leading food companies, or take integrated companies with food brands as well, how do you have, without saying names, but do you have any examples of how these companies are actively engaging in everything that you've said today to protect themselves for the future?
Well, yeah, I think that we've got some of those brands at Revelation who are actively doing things to engage their stakeholders. And it's ironically in the agriculture community, there are some people who look at some of these brands and they say, what you're doing is not accurate, or what you're doing is sort of not painting the whole story. But what they're doing is they're focused on the people who are important to them, and they are giving those people what they want. So you talk about, some of the people who are speakers here. They engage with their customers and they give them what they want. We may have problems with them, and we can talk to them about that in a constructive way. But, that's how you do it. You give the people what they want.
Well, David, I guess you're always going to be in demand for a job.